In this video, I'm going to solve this and this by building this. Let's get into it. Like most projects, it seems, I started by breaking down the sheets of plywood with the track saw. Here I'm cutting down a sheet of 1/2 inch plywood to 6 feet long that would make up the back panel of the rack. This panel is more for looks and to keep the drywall from getting beat up, but you could of course just screw the cleats directly to the wall studs. The 2-foot offcut became the bottom of the back panel, and it was just a little too wide to allow my cabinet drawers to fully open, so I trimmed a couple inches off on the table saw. Next, I broke down the 3/4 inch plywood into a more manageable size so I could rip the strips on the table saw. I set the table saw to 6 inches and then ripped a bunch of the strips. With all the 6-inch strips cut, I beveled the blade to 45 degrees and then ran all the pieces through, cutting them directly in half. This left me with 2 cleats the exact same size out of each strip without having to adjust the table saw 7 billion times. Then I just quickly knocked off the sharp points with a sanding block. The long cleats were already cut to size, so then I just had to cut the shorter bottom cleats to length at the miter saw. To connect the 2 back panels, I used one of the short cleats. I just marked where the cleat would be halfway on each piece and then glued and brad nailed it on. To make sure I could move it up on the wall without it coming apart, I went ahead and added some screws from the back side. The rest of the strips were just glued and nailed on. To space the rest of the cleats, I went with 7 inches from the bottom of each piece to the bottom of the next, using that first cleat as my reference. Then I simply added glue, lined up each cleat with the marks I made, and nailed it on. Using a drywall square helped make sure the centers were straight as well. Probably the most asked question in all my videos is about these work tables. I'll leave links to all the products you see me using down in the video description as always, but let me know down in the comments if you'd like me to make a standalone video review on these tables. It was definitely a lot of trips back and forth around the table attaching the cleats, but I still think this was the easier route building it down on the workbench, rather than piece by piece up on the wall. Next I stained some pine black to frame around the panel, for no reason other than because I just wanted to. I spend a lot of time in the shop and it's always enjoyable when things not only function good, but look good as well. Off camera, I sprayed a couple of quick coats of poly to lock in the black stain, and then attached it with CA glue and brad nails. Before attaching the panel to the wall, I went through and marked all the studs. Then I could really find out if it was a good idea to build it all on the workbench first or not. It was a little awkward to carry, but definitely easier than I thought it might be, and I'm glad I did it this way. I just fired a couple brad nails into a stud to make sure it wouldn't fall over and then checked to make sure it was level. Then I set up a laser to quickly go through and screw through each cleat into the panel, drywall, and into the studs. Next, I could make up all the clamp brackets. I went through and measured and ended up making 3 different sizes for my clamps, 10, 8, and 6 inches deep. I didn't draw out each piece like this, but just as a visual representation, here's what I did. On the 10-inch ones, for example, I measured over and down 10 inches, then 2 inches over and down from those marks, and then connected those lines. Here's another shot showing how I cut each piece nested to minimize the plywood waste. To batch them out, I just ripped strips either 10, 8, or 6 inches wide on the table saw. Then the rest of the cuts were made on the miter saw either at 0 or 45 degrees, just flipping the pieces around as needed to cut the shape. This was a really quick way to do it with minimal waste. Next, I could cut all the back pieces that would connect the 2 angled pieces. The size of these just depended on how wide my clamps were. I added glue to each piece and then added a couple brad nails to hold them together. Then I could pre-drill and add screws for added strength. Lastly, I added the cleats that I chopped down to size from an extra strip that I had made at the beginning. I was curious just how strong this system was, so there was only one way to find out. I'd say it's strong enough for some clamps. The last thing to do was load up all the clamps. You can see I still have room on the brackets already made to add quite a few more clamps, and then if I need to, I can just rearrange the brackets tighter and make some more. Alright, thanks for watching. Hopefully this video helped you if you need to build something like this in your shop or garage. And of course, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. I'd really appreciate it. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.